All right, welcome everyone to This Explainer. Today, we're looking at a pretty fascinating dynamic. If you've ever felt completely overpowered in a conversation, or you've just walked away feeling entirely drained by someone else's energy, this is going to be incredibly relevant for you. We're going to unpack a really profound philosophy from Friedrich Nietzsche that basically completely flips our traditional understanding of power and presence.
So, let me ask you this. Have you ever actually talked yourself into losing? You know the feeling. You say absolutely everything you need to say, you explain yourself perfectly, and yet you still walk away feeling totally defeated. You're probably dealing with people who just speak loudly, they interrupt constantly, and they dominate the room with this kind of arrogance they try to disguise as confidence. And deep down, you mistakenly believe that staying silent is a sign of weakness. You think that not reacting is somehow surrendering.
But I want you to just stop for a second and really feel that knot in your throat. You know that tight, incredibly uncomfortable, visceral feeling? It's the physical discomfort of desperately wanting to be heard, of feeling invalidated and overshadowed, like every single word you try to speak is just pushing you further and further away from your own strength. And then, bam, the desperation to be heard kicks in. You speed up, you argue, you fight tooth and nail just to make them understand. It's because the world conditions us to believe that every single conversation is this battlefield for the truth, and you have to fight and win. We just get completely swept up in the anxiety, the absolute chaos of it all, trying to out-talk everyone around us because we think we have to defend our ideas.
But here's the thing, it's a total illusion. The illusion of words. This desperate need we feel to justify ourselves, to prove our point. It's simply a cry from a fragile ego that's trapped in this exhausting desire to be validated. It's an ego that literally cannot stand being questioned, and it confuses mere disagreement with a full-on personal attack. True power has never been in the words themselves, but in their absence.
Okay, let's really dive into this. Nietzsche had a name for this. He called it herd morality. He saw this reactive, frantic need to argue as a symptom of our absolute deepest weakness. It's the behavior of living entirely under the expectations of others. You're desperately seeking approval, just wanting to be seen as correct. We argue defensively just to avoid appearing weak to the pack, but ironically, this very quest for approval is exactly what keeps you weak.
Which brings us to a seriously profound realization. Those who talk too much reveal too much. Just think about that for a second. The game of discussion is basically a theater, and the very first person to stand up, to react, to start acting in that theater has already lost. Those who feel the constant need to convince others are already playing at a massive disadvantage.
So this sets up a pretty stark contrast. Herd morality versus the Übermensch. The reactive mind of the herd is a subjugated mind. It constantly seeks that validation, it reacts purely out of fear, and it's driven entirely by that fragile ego we talked about. But on the flip side, we have the observing mind, the truly dangerous mind of the Übermensch. This is the master of self, someone who controls their own energy and completely transcends those common everyday limitations.
And this brilliantly illustrates the concept of the Übermensch, or the overman. This is a rare, dangerous, and completely free being. They absolutely do not engage in cheap emotional games. They aren't debating to win some sort of cheap validation. Instead, they shape the world in their own image through absolute self-control. They use strategic silence not as a lack of response, but as a language, a very specific language that imposes an overwhelming presence.
Because, and we really need to absorb this one, silence is not empty. When we enter the psychology of the void, we realize that silence is a profound, incredibly heavy force. It is definitely not just the absence of sound. Actually, it is a threat. By simply choosing not to react, you completely destabilize your opponent. You strip away all their external resistance. You force the other person to sit there and confront their own arguments, their own noise, without you providing a comfortable little wall for them to bounce their ego against.
It is absolute authority. While everyone else is shouting and frantically explaining themselves, the master of silence commands respect simply with a gaze. In a society of constant, non-stop noise, those who master this deep, unsettling level of silence, well, they're kings.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how modern psychology completely confirms what Nietzsche sensed all those years ago. When you break down the psychology of the void, silence acts as a literal mirror, reflecting the other person's emptiness right back at them. It activates the amygdala in their brain, triggering immediate fear and anxiety. It completely shatters a manipulator's cycle of control because, think about it, they need your reaction to validate their position. When they don't get it, they panic. And incredibly, your silence actually triggers their own unresolved traumas and insecurities, forcing them to project their own fears right onto you.
So how do we actually put this into practice? Let's look at the arsenal of the Übermensch. This is your practical protocol to move from just dead theory into using silence as a sharp, conscious blade. Step 1. Kill the urge to respond. It's poison. Just let it go. Step 2. Observe like a hunter. Don't listen just so you can reply. Listen to perceive their hidden fears. Step 3. Weaponize time and tension. Let that uncomfortable pause do all the heavy lifting for you. And step 4. Embrace unpredictability. You stop being reactive, and you instantly become the absolute gravitational center of the interaction.
So the absolutely crucial point here is making sure we don't mix these two up. Do not confuse a false, people-pleasing peace with true mastery. The silence of submission is a total trap. It's domesticated surrender. It's just swallowing your anger and avoiding conflict at all costs. Nietzsche mercilessly exposed this as the morality of slaves. What we are talking about building is the silence of presence. It is active, it's tense, it is charged with intention, and it is pure dominance.
And that perfectly explains the true will to power. Listen, the will to power isn't about shouting louder than everyone else to dominate the room. It is about dominating yourself. It's about taking back total control of your own narrative and actively choosing not to be shaped by what others expect or what they demand of you.
You literally have to kill that herd morality within you. Let your silence become an active shout of power. Let it become this invisible boundary that stands up straight right in the middle of chaos. It doesn't bend, it doesn't humiliate itself, and it is completely 100% unapologetic for existing. Because, when you strip it all down to the absolute basics, the weak shout. They scream for validation. Every single time they react, every time they try to over-justify themselves, they are giving you this involuntary scream that reveals their powerlessness. It shows you exactly where their reactive mind is most vulnerable.
But the strong remain silent. They master their presence. The warrior of the Übermensch has already won the battle before a single word is even spoken, simply because they no longer have any need to prove anything to anyone. They know exactly who they are, and they know exactly what they deserve.
So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away from our explainer today. Will you choose the silence that commands respect? Are you ready to stop being the easy target, the one who just tries to keep the peace, and actually transition from a defensive reaction to commanding self-mastery? The world really doesn't need more talk.